Welcome to the Monday Morning Recap with Pastor Zach Bechtold, where we take the previous Sunday's sermon and we dig a little deeper. We talk about what made it into the sermon, we talk about what didn't, and we simply further the conversation with one another about Scripture, about life, and about everything in between. Good morning, Pastor Zach here, and today our reflection finishes up. It sums up our Church on a Mission sermon series. And this whole sermon series has been about being present with ourselves, being present with our neighbor, and being present with God. And where we find ourselves in that presence and making that space and allowing ourselves to be fully present in this life, how that calls us to share God's love and grace in all that we do, to hold sacred space for people to be human, including ourselves, holding space for people to be frustrated and scared and hurt and grieving and celebratory and everything in between. See, this idea of being present, we concluded it yesterday with being with the least of these. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, that's where our scripture came from yesterday. And it's Jesus telling a string of parables, essentially telling the disciples to be ready for the temple's destruction. Be ready for what you feel like is going to be the end of the world, but there's more. Be ready for it. Be present. And he finishes up that string of parables by telling them there's going to be a king, comes down, there's going to be sheep and goats separated, and those who are the sheep are the ones that fed and clothed and cared for Jesus and were present for Jesus even when they didn't see him. And it's the righteous who are looking, right? The righteous who are left wondering, well, when did we see you? And Jesus simply says, those who are with the least of these are with me. And I find that fascinating because we often get stuck in this thing of, well, who are the least of these? Right? It's not me. I'm certainly not the least of these, right? And yet often we are. If we allow ourselves to be present, to be fully present in this life, there are days where we are the least of these. But there's a trap that we fall into as well. If taking this idea of the least of these and looking upon our community, upon our friends and family, upon strangers, upon whomever, and going, it's you. You're the least of these, and I'm going to go over here. And that's exactly what Jesus is talking about. It's not so much that the people who get it right saw Jesus in those moments. It's the people who get it right were fully present and aware enough and humble enough to go, oh, I can be here for a moment. I see this person, they're hungry, I'll feed them. They're thirsty, I'll give them something to drink. They're naked, clothes. I'll go visit them when they're sick or in prison, and on and on. It's just the awareness to be aware, to be fully present in the world around us, to not look somebody in the eyes as they stand on the corner with a sign and ignore them. But that's easier. It's easier to pretend it's not there. It's easier to pretend that there's not racial or gender injustice. It's easier to pretend that there's not homelessness. It's easier to pretend that there aren't children in our communities that are hungry. It's easier to pretend or look away rather than to be fully present in the uncomfortable work that it is to be with the least of these. And I find it really interesting because it's hard work. This whole idea of being a church on a mission and being present is hard work because it makes us be intentional. It makes us slow down and see. It makes us feel. And maybe it's just me, but it seems like a very human thing that when we embody empathy, when we feel so deeply that we feel other people's pain and sadness and hurt and wounds and grief, it makes us uncomfortable. And it's much more easy to pretend that it's not there. And yet it's Jesus who says when we're fully present with the least of these, with people who are hurting, who are grieving, who are wandering, who are just being fully human, when we are fully present with them, Yeah, we're going to feel something. But it allows us these moments to provide sacred space to be with people, even if it's just for a moment. And we've talked a lot about presence in this sermon series and what it means to be fully present and fully human and just fully there. And I think it boils down to that. When we're not allowing ourselves to be fully present, it's because we don't want to be uncomfortable. We don't want to acknowledge the pain, the hurt, and the suffering in this world. Not because we don't want to help, but because it's pretty overwhelming. And it hurts. And often we don't know what to do. But I encourage us to go, to be fully present, to feel in such a way that you feel with people, that you hold that sacred space close enough so that our siblings around us know they're not alone. And even if you don't know what to do or what to say, just being there even for a moment, raising awareness to issues and injustices in our community, that's being fully present. It's doing the hard, uncomfortable work of feeling and embodying that empathy. Being fully present isn't so much about the big things we do. Often being fully present is just seeing people. It's just seeing people. And rather than looking away or pretending we didn't see them, we look in their eyes and acknowledge their human dignity, and we see Christ looking right back at us. And so let's go. Let's get up and go from whatever place we're sitting in today as you're listening to this, and let's be fully present in the good, the bad, and the ugly in this world. Let's go be present and share God's love and grace with all people. Welcome to the Monday Morning Recap with Pastor Zach Bechtold, where we take the previous Sunday's sermon and we dig a little deeper. We talk about what made it into the sermon, we talk about what didn't, and we simply further the conversation with one another about Scripture, about life, and about everything in between.